3 weeks passed aboard the Whisper of Stars. The Aldrani fleet moved deeper into contested space, hunting for Vethkari forces. Valara commanded her ships with skill and confidence. Every battle ended in victory. Every victory made her more certain that the war would soon be over. The humans remained invisible. They trained in their cargo hold. They ate their meals alone. They watched the battles from a distance, studying but never participating. Valara barely thought about them anymore. Then came Korath Station. The station floated in the darkness between two star systems. A massive structure of metal and glass that served as a supply depot for the Aldrani fleet. It was supposed to be safe. It was supposed to be secure. Intelligence reports said there were no Vethkari forces within 3 light years. The intelligence reports were wrong. Valara was aboard her personal transport, traveling from the Whisper of Stars to the station for a routine inspection. She had 12 guards with her, all elite warriors in gleaming armor. She expected nothing more than a boring afternoon of checking supply counts and talking to station commanders. The first explosion rocked the transport just as it entered the station's docking bay. Alarms screamed. Red lights flashed. Through the windows, Valara saw Vethkari warships emerging from hidden positions all around the station. They had been waiting. They had planned this trap for weeks. "Get us back to the fleet," Valara shouted. "We can't, Princess," the pilot responded, his voice tight with fear. "The engines are hit. We're going down." The transport crashed into the station's lower levels. Valara was thrown from her seat, her head striking a metal beam. When she opened her eyes, the world was spinning and filled with smoke. "Princess. Princess, can you hear me?" Hands pulled her from the wreckage. Her guards, those who had survived the crash, formed a protective circle around her. She counted only 6 of them standing. The others were dead or dying in the burning transport. "Where are we?" she asked, forcing her mind to focus. "Lower maintenance level," a guard answered. "We've lost contact with the station command. The Vethkari are everywhere." Valara drew her plasma pistol. Her head was bleeding and her left arm was badly bruised, but she could still fight. "We moved toward the upper levels. Find a way to signal the fleet." They moved through the dark corridors of the station. The lights flickered and died. Emergency power cast everything in dim red shadows. In the distance, they could hear the clicking sounds of Vethkari warriors, the terrible noise of their clawed feet on metal floors. The first attack came without warning. A Vethkari hunter burst from a side passage, its blade cutting down one of Valara's guards before anyone could react. The insectoid creature was tall and covered in black armor that seemed to grow from its body. Its 4 eyes burned with alien hatred. The remaining guards fired, but their plasma bolts splashed harmlessly against the creature's shell. It killed 2 more guards before retreating into the shadows. "Our weapons aren't working," a guard said, his voice shaking. "Concentrated fire," Valara ordered. "Aim for the joints. The armor is thinner there." But she knew the truth. They were outmatched. The Vethkari hunters were elite killers, designed for exactly this kind of close combat. Her guards were brave, but they were trained for open battle, not fighting in dark corridors. Against an enemy they could barely hurt. They were going to die here. Valara had accepted this when she heard the gunfire. It was different from Aldrani weapons. Louder, sharper. It echoed through the corridors like thunder. Then she heard human voices. "Contact left. Danny, suppress that corner. Moving. Cover me." 2 more coming from behind. "Sergeant, handle it." The humans appeared from a side passage, moving fast and low. They were only 8 of them, but they moved like a single creature with many parts. Their rifles roared, filling the air with metal projectiles instead of plasma. Cole Bennett was at the front. A Vethkari hunter charged at him, blade raised. Bennett didn't run. He stepped forward, let the blade pass over his shoulder, and pressed his rifle against the joint between the creature's head and body. He fired 3 times. The hunter fell. "Princess Valara!" Bennett shouted. "Stay behind us. We're getting you out." "How did you find us?" she asked, too stunned to say anything else. "We tracked your transport's emergency beacon." "No time to explain. Move." The humans surrounded the surviving Alderney and pushed forward through the station. The Vethkari attacked again and again, but the humans met every attack with furious determination. Private Danny Reeves took a blade through his shoulder. Valara watched in shock as he simply gritted his teeth, switched his rifle to his other hand, and kept firing. Blood poured down his arm, but he didn't stop. Sergeant Maria Vance found 2 wounded Alderney guards in a collapsed section of corridor. Without hesitation, she grabbed them and dragged them to safety, even as a Vethkari slashed a deep cut across her face. A soldier named Lisa Cho held a narrow passage alone while the others moved the wounded. 3 hunters came at her. She killed 2 before the 3rd got close enough to strike. She fell, but she had bought them precious seconds. "Lisa!" Danny screamed. "Keep moving," Bennett ordered. His voice was hard as iron. "We stop, we all die. Move." They reached a cargo bay where a small maintenance shuttle waited. Greg Palmer and Sam Torres ran ahead to prepare it for launch. A swarm of Vethkari hunters emerged from the darkness, cutting them off from the others. Bennett didn't hesitate. He walked directly into the enemy, his rifle firing until it overheated and died in his hands. Then he drew a knife and kept fighting. Valara saw him take hits that should have killed him. She saw him fall and rise again. She saw him refuse to stop. "Get to the shuttle," he roared. "That's an order." Maria Vance grabbed Valara's arm and pulled her toward the shuttle. "Come on, princess. We're leaving, but your captain, he knows what he's doing. Move." The shuttle lifted off just as Bennett reached it, leaping through the closing door. Behind them, the Vethkari screamed in frustration. Valara looked around the crowded shuttle. 8 humans had come to save her. 4 had died. Greg Palmer and Sam Torres had fallen at the cargo bay. Lisa Cho had died holding the corridor. Another soldier had taken a fatal wound during the final push. Danny Reeves sat against the wall, his face pale from blood loss, but still conscious. Maria Vance was wrapping a bandage around her wounded face. Cole Bennett stood at the front of the shuttle, staring out at the stars. "Why?" Valara asked. Her voice was barely a whisper. Bennett turned to look at her. His uniform was torn and burned. Blood covered his hands. His eyes were filled with pain and grief for his fallen soldiers. "Because it was the right thing to do," he said. The shuttle flew toward the whisper of stars, carrying a princess who had just witnessed something she could not understand. Humans had died for her. Humans she had treated with contempt. Humans she had considered less than animals, and they had come anyway. The shuttle docked with the whisper of stars, and the survivors were rushed to the medical bay. Alderney doctors treated the wounded, both their own people and the humans. Valara refused treatment for her own injuries. She had only small cuts and bruises. The humans had suffered far worse. She stood in the corner of the medical bay and watched. Danny Reeves lay on a bed while doctors worked on his shoulder. The blade had gone deep, cutting through muscle and scraping bone. He would need weeks to heal, but he was cracking jokes with the Alderney nurses, making them smile despite themselves. Maria Vance sat on another bed, her face now covered with a bandage. The cut would leave a permanent scar. When an Alderney doctor apologized for not being able to remove it completely, she just shrugged. "Scars show where we've been," she said. I'll wear this one with pride." The other surviving humans were gathered around their wounded friends, talking quietly, checking on each other. They had just lost 4 of their team. They had just fought a battle that should have killed them all. Yet here they were, caring for each other, supporting each other, staying strong together. Valara did not understand. When Bennett finally left the medical bay, she followed him. He walked through the corridors of the ship without speaking, his shoulders heavy with exhaustion. He looked like a man carrying the weight of a mountain. "Captain Bennett," she called out. He stopped and turned. His face was blank, but his eyes held deep sadness. "Princess, come with me." She led him to her private chambers, the same room where she had stood watching the stars on the day he arrived. The door closed behind them, and they were alone. Valara turned to face him. For a long moment, she could not speak. The words she needed did not exist in any language she knew. "Why?" she finally asked. It was the same question she had asked on the shuttle, but now she needed a real answer. Bennett met her gaze steadily. "Why did we come for you? Yes, I treated you like dirt. I humiliated you. I put you in the worst quarters on this ship. I excluded you from everything. I made it clear that I considered you less than nothing." Her voice shook with emotion. "And then you came anyway. You lost 4 of your people saving me. Why?" Bennett was silent for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was quiet but firm. "Because it was the right thing to do." "That's not an answer." Valara's control broke. She stepped toward him, her silver eyes blazing. "Your people died for me. Lisa Cho died holding that corridor. Greg Palmer and Sam Torres died at the cargo bay. I don't even know the name of the 4th one who fell. How can you stand there and tell me it was just the right thing to do?" "His name was Kevin Mills," Bennett said softly. "He was 23 years old. He had a sister back on Earth who he called every week. He joined the service because he wanted to see the stars." He paused. "And yes, it was the right thing to do." Valara stared at him. "I don't understand you. I don't understand any of you. I know." Bennett walked to the window and looked out at the stars. "Your people have been in space for 50,000 years. You've built empires that span hundreds of worlds. You live for centuries. You've seen things my species can't even imagine." He turned back to face her. "Humans have been in space for less than 300 years. We're new. We're young. We make mistakes. We fight among ourselves. All of that is true. Then why are you so willing to die for strangers?" Valara asked. "For people who hate you?" Bennett thought about this for a moment. "Because we know what it's like to need help and have no one come. Our history is full of moments where people suffered because others looked away. We swore we would never be the ones who look away. Even when those people would let you die in their place. Even then." Bennett shrugged. "It's not about whether someone deserves our help. It's about who we choose to be. Lisa and Kevin and Greg and Sam died because they chose to be the kind of people who help others. That choice mattered more to them than their own lives." Valara sank into a chair. Her mind was spinning. Everything she had been taught about humans was falling apart. They were not primitive brutes driven by violence and fear. They were something else entirely, something she had never encountered before. They were stubborn in their goodness. "I was wrong about your people," she said quietly. "Maybe," Bennett agreed. "Or maybe you were right about some things. We are violent. We do fight among ourselves. We have caused terrible suffering throughout our history." He paused. "But we're trying to be better. Every generation, we try to be a little better than the one before. That's all we can do." Valara looked up at him. "What can I do? How can I repay the debt I owe you?" "There's no debt, Princess." "Yes, there is. 4 of your people died saving my life. I will not pretend that means nothing." Bennett considered this. Then remember them. Remember their names. Remember what they did. And if you ever see someone in trouble, someone who seems beneath you, someone you've been taught to look down on, remember that they might surprise you." Valara nodded slowly. "I will remember. I promise." She stood and walked to the door. Before she opened it, she turned back to him. "I'm moving your people to proper quarters. You'll have access to our training facilities, our briefings, everything. From now on, you're not observers. You're allies. Thank you, Princess. And Captain Bennett, there will be a memorial service for your fallen soldiers. I expect you to let me know what traditions your people follow. I will honor them properly." Bennett's expression softened. For the first time since she had met him, she saw something other than calm patience in his eyes. She saw gratitude. "That would mean a lot to us, Princess. Thank you." The memorial service was held the following day. Valara stood among the human soldiers as they spoke the names of their dead. Lisa Cho, Greg Palmer, Sam Torres, Kevin Mills. She listened to stories about their lives, their dreams, their hopes. She learned that Lisa had wanted to become a doctor, that Greg had left behind a wife and a newborn son, that Sam had been training for a marathon before deployment, that Kevin had painted beautiful pictures of alien worlds he hoped to visit. When it was her turn to speak, Valara stepped forward. "I did not know these soldiers," she said. "I did not give them the respect they deserved while they lived. But I know what they did. They gave their lives to save mine. They gave their lives for someone who had treated them with contempt." She looked at the surviving humans, at Danny and Maria and the others. "I will not forget them. As long as I live, their names will be remembered in the Aldrani Empire. They will be honored as heroes." She spoke their names again, slowly and carefully. Lisa Cho, Greg Palmer, Sam Torres, Kevin Mills. And in the silence that followed, something changed in Valara's heart. A door that had been closed for 200 years began to open. Princess Zarathiel stood at the window of her chamber aboard the diplomatic station, watching the stars drift slowly past. Her reflection stared back at her tall, elegant, with silver-white hair that fell to her waist and eyes the color of pale violet moons. She was beautiful by any standard in the galaxy, a daughter of the mighty Valorian Empire, descended from a bloodline that had ruled for 10,000 years. And today, she would marry a human. The very thought made her stomach turn. Humans were such small creatures, so fragile and short-lived. They burned bright for barely a century before their bodies failed them. They possessed no telepathic gifts, no enhanced senses, no natural weapons. The Valorians had fought them for 30 years. And while the humans had proven surprisingly difficult to defeat, they were still considered primitive by the great houses of the Empire. Her father, Emperor Kelver, had explained the situation with cold practicality. The war had drained both sides. The Terran coalition controlled vital trade routes that the Empire needed. A marriage alliance would end the bloodshed and open new paths for commerce and expansion. It was politics, nothing more. "You are a princess of Valoria," her father had said. "You will do your duty." And so she would. The door chimed softly, and her handmaiden entered with a bow. "Your Highness, the Terran delegation has arrived. They await you in the ceremony hall." Zarathiel took a deep breath and straightened her ceremonial gown. The fabric shimmered like liquid starlight, designed to remind everyone present of her noble heritage. If she must marry beneath her station, she would at least look like the princess she was. She walked through the corridors of the station with her guards flanking her. Valorian soldiers in gleaming armor, each one capable of killing a dozen humans in hand-to-hand combat. She drew strength from their presence. The ceremony hall was a neutral space, decorated with both Valorian and Terran symbols. A crowd of diplomats and officials from both sides filled the room, their conversations dying to whispers as she entered. Zarathiel scanned the Terran side, searching for her future husband. She expected to see a military commander covered in medals, or perhaps a wealthy politician in expensive clothes. Someone important enough to be worthy of this alliance, even if he was only human. Instead, she saw a man standing quietly at the back of the Terran group. He was not tall, barely reaching her shoulder. His hair was brown and slightly messy, and he wore simple gray clothes that looked more suited to a worker than a wedding. His hands were rough with calluses, and there was a small scar above his left eyebrow. He stood with his shoulders slightly hunched, as if trying to take up less space. When their eyes met, he gave her a small, uncertain smile. Zarathiel felt her heart sink. This could not be him. Surely the Terran coalition had not sent a common laborer to marry a princess of the Valorian Empire. Ambassador Patricia Hayes stepped forward, a middle-aged human woman with sharp eyes and graying hair. "Your Highness, may I present Danny Cole? He has volunteered to fulfill the marriage requirement of our treaty." "Volunteered?" Zarathiel's voice was colder than she intended. "Yes, Your Highness." The ambassador's expression was carefully neutral. When the treaty terms were announced, many in our coalition were reluctant. Danny stepped forward so that no one would be forced into an unwilling union. Zarathiel looked at the man again. He met her gaze without flinching, though there was no challenge in his eyes. Just a quiet steadiness that she found oddly unsettling. "And what is your occupation, Danny Cole?" she asked. "Maintenance technician, Your Highness," he replied. His voice was soft and calm. "I fix things. Life support systems, power grids, that sort of work." A technician. A common repair worker. Zarathiel wanted to laugh at the absurdity of it all, but her training held. She was a princess. She would not show weakness. "I see," she said simply. The ceremony itself was brief and practical. Valorian traditions required an exchange of vows and a joining of hands. Terran customs apparently involved rings, simple bands of metal that Danny produced from his pocket. When he slipped the ring onto her finger, his hands were steady and gentle. "I promise to respect you," he said quietly, so only she could hear. "I know this isn't what you wanted. I'll try not to make it harder than it has to be." Zarathiel did not know how to respond to that, so she said nothing. The reception that followed was tense and formal. Valorian nobles looked at Danny with barely hidden contempt, whispering behind their hands. The humans seemed uncomfortable, out of place among the taller, more elegant Valorians. Danny stood quietly by Zarathiel's side. Accepting glasses of wine he didn't drink, and food he barely touched on at one point. Lord Vexaran, a powerful duke who had once sought Zarathiel's hand, approached them with a cruel smile. "So this is the human pet," he said, looking Danny up and down. "Tell me, creature, do you perform tricks? Perhaps you could fix a broken light for our amusement." The Valorian nobles nearby laughed. Danny simply looked at the lord with calm eyes. "I'd be happy to help with any repairs, my lord," he said politely. "Just let me know what you need." Vexaran's smile faltered. He had expected anger or shame, not quiet agreement. After a moment, he walked away with a dismissive snort. Zarathiel studied her new husband with new curiosity. Most beings would have reacted to such an insult. Even the weakest Valorian would have attempted some defense of their honor. But Danny had simply absorbed the mockery like water into sand. Was it weakness? Or something else? That night, they were shown to their shared quarters. The room was large and luxurious, with a bed big enough for 3 Valorians. Zarathiel stood uncertainly, unsure what to expect. Danny walked to a storage closet and pulled out a spare blanket and pillow. Without a word, he arranged them on the floor near the window. "What are you doing?" she asked. "Finding a place to sleep," he replied simply. The bed is yours, Your Highness. You didn't choose this marriage any more than I did. I figure the least I can do is give you your space." He lay down on the floor, turning his back to her. And within minutes, his breathing had slowed to the rhythm of sleep. Zarathiel stood in the darkness for a long time, watching him. This strange, quiet human who fixed machines and slept on floors and accepted insults without anger. She did not understand him at all, and somehow that bothered her more than the marriage itself. 3 months had passed since the wedding, and Danny Cole had become a fixture in the imperial palace of Valoria Prime. He woke each morning before the sun rose, folding his blankets neatly and placing them in the closet before Zarathiel stirred. He would wash and dress in his simple clothes, then spend his days wandering the vast palace, finding things to fix. The palace servants had been confused at first. A human prince, even one married into the family, should not be crawling through maintenance tunnels or rewiring broken heating systems. But Danny had smiled and asked politely for tools, and eventually they had stopped questioning him. Now they sought him out. When a food preparation unit failed, they called for Danny. When the lighting in a corridor flickered, Danny appeared with his toolkit. He learned their names, asked about their families, and never once treated them as beneath him. The noble houses of Valoria found this behavior disgusting. "He acts like a servant," Lady Mirathex complained at a court gathering. "It is shameful for someone of his position to perform such low tasks." "What position?" Lord Vexaran laughed. "He is a pet, nothing more. A trained animal that the humans sent to amuse us." Zarathiel stood nearby, pretending not to hear. She watched Danny across the room, where he was helping a young servant boy carry a heavy tray. The boy was smiling at something Danny had said. The princess felt a strange twist in her chest. Was it anger at the noble's cruelty? Or something else? She pushed the feeling aside. The weeks continued. Danny maintained his quiet routine, and the mockery of the court continued with equal consistency. At formal dinners, nobles would make jokes at his expense. At ceremonies, they would accidentally bump into him or spill drinks on his clothes. Lord Vexaran took particular pleasure in these games, finding new ways each day to humiliate the human prince. Through it all, Danny remained calm. He would apologize for being in the way, clean up whatever mess had been made, and continue with his day. He never raised his voice, never showed anger, never struck back. One evening, Zarathiel found him in the royal gardens. He was kneeling beside a small pond, where a wounded bird lay in his careful hands. Its wing was broken, bent at an unnatural angle. "What are you doing?" she asked, approaching slowly. "Trying to help," Danny replied without looking up. "Found her by the south wall. Something attacked her, maybe one of those flying predators I've seen around the towers." He worked with surprising skill, fashioning a tiny splint from thin sticks and strips of cloth. His movements were gentle but precise, and the bird seemed to calm under his touch. "You care for animals?" Zarathiel asked. "I care for living things," he said simply. "They don't judge you for where you come from or what you are. They just need help, and you can either give it or walk away." She sat down on a nearby stone, watching him work. The twin suns of Valoria were setting, painting the sky in shades of purple and gold. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. "Why don't you fight back?" she finally asked. "The things they say to you, the way they treat you, any Valorian would have challenged them to combat by now." Danny finished with the bird and set it gently in a nest of soft grass he had prepared. Then he looked at her, his eyes calm and thoughtful. "Would fighting change their minds?" he asked. "If I challenged Lord Vexaran and lost, they would laugh harder. If I won, they would hate me more. Either way, the peace treaty suffers. Your people learn that humans are violent and dangerous, exactly what they already believe. He wiped his hands on his pants. I'm not here to prove anything, Your Highness. I'm here to build a bridge between our peoples. Sometimes that means being the one who absorbs the blows. Zarathiel studied him carefully. In the fading light, she noticed things she had missed before. The way his eyes constantly scanned his surroundings, even in moments of apparent calm. The faded scars on his forearms, visible where his sleeves had rolled up. The particular way he positioned himself, always with a clear path to the exits. You said you were a maintenance technician, she said slowly. What did you do before that? I was in the service, he replied. Military. Nothing special. Nothing special, she repeated. What kind of service? Danny was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was softer than usual. The kind that leaves scars, Your Highness. He did not elaborate, and she did not press. But something had shifted between them, a small crack in the wall of formality that separated princess from commoner, Valorian from human. That night, they talked longer than they ever had before. Danny told her about Earth, about the blue oceans that covered most of the planet, the forests of green that stretched for thousands of miles, the cities that glittered like jewels in the darkness. He described snow, which she had never seen, and rain, which Valoria Prime lacked. He spoke of his childhood in a small town, of a mother who had taught him to be kind, and a father who had taught him to be strong in turn. Zarathiel found herself sharing things she had never told anyone. Her loneliness in the vast palace, the pressure of being the Emperor's only daughter, the fear that she would never be anything more than a political tool for her father's ambitions. You're more than that, Danny said quietly. I've seen how the servants look at you. They respect you because you treat them with dignity. That's not politics, that's who you are. Zarathiel felt warmth spread through her chest. When was the last time someone had seen her as anything other than a princess? You are a strange human, Danny Cole, she said. He smiled the gentle smile of his. I'll take that as a compliment, Your Highness. From that night on, things were different. Zarathiel began to notice Danny more, the small kindnesses he performed, the quiet strength beneath his humble exterior. She began to look forward to their evening conversations, to the stories he would tell and the questions he would ask. She still did not understand him, but she was beginning to want to, and somewhere deep inside, she was beginning to realize that her common human husband might be far more than he appeared. The Festival of Eternal Stars was the most sacred celebration in the Valorian calendar. For 3 days, the people of the Empire honored their ancestors and prayed for guidance from the cosmos. The Imperial Palace was decorated with floating lights and shimmering crystals, and music filled every corridor. Emperor Calver had departed 2 days earlier for a diplomatic meeting with the border colonies, leaving Zarathiel to oversee the festivities in his absence. It was a test of her leadership, her father had said. A chance to prove herself worthy of the throne. Danny had offered to stay out of sight during the celebration, knowing his presence might offend the more traditional nobles. But Zarathiel had refused. You are my husband, she had told him, surprising herself with the firmness in her voice. You belong at my side. And so he stood beside her in the great throne room, dressed in the finest clothes the palace tailors could make for his smaller human frame. He looked uncomfortable in the formal attire, constantly adjusting his collar, but he smiled when their eyes met. The evening was going well. The nobles were behaving themselves. The entertainment was excellent, and even Lord Vexaran seemed content to keep his distance. Zarathiel allowed herself to relax, just a little. That was when the lights went out. For a moment, there was only darkness and confused murmuring. Then the emergency lights flickered on, casting everything in a dim red glow. And then the screaming began. Armed soldiers poured through the doors, not palace guards, but warriors wearing the colors of House Thexaran. They moved with deadly purpose, cutting down the royal guards before they could draw their weapons. Blood splashed across the polished floors as bodies fell. Zarathiel felt Danny grab her arm, pulling her back toward the throne. His grip was surprisingly strong. "Stay behind me," he said. His voice different somehow, harder, colder. Before she could respond, Lord Vexaran strode through the chaos, stepping over bodies without a glance. He held a ceremonial blade in his hand, its edge gleaming with fresh blood. Behind him came more soldiers, surrounding the throne area in a ring of steel. "Princess Zarathiel," Vexaran said with a mocking bow. "How lovely to see you without your father's protection. What is the meaning of this?" Zarathiel demanded, drawing herself up to her full height. "This is treason, Vexaran. You will be executed for this." "I think not." The Lord smiled, showing teeth. "Your father is far away, and by the time he returns, you will be my wife, and I will control the throne. The great houses are tired of peace with the humans. They want a strong leader who will resume the war and crush these creatures once and for all." He gestured at Danny with his blade. "Speaking of which, I believe I'll start by killing your pet. Consider it a wedding gift." Zarathiel stepped in front of Danny without thinking. "You will not touch him." Vexaran laughed. "How touching. The princess protects her human. Don't worry, my dear, I'll make you forget all about him soon enough." He raised his blade and stepped forward, and then Danny spoke. "Your Highness." His voice was quiet, but it cut through the noise of the room like a blade through silk. "Please step aside." Zarathiel turned to look at him, and her breath caught in her throat. The man standing behind her was not the humble maintenance worker she had married. This Danny stood straight and tall, his shoulders back, his eyes sharp and focused. Every trace of uncertainty and meekness had vanished, replaced by something cold and calculating. He was looking at the soldiers, surrounding them 47 armed warriors with an expression of calm assessment, as if he was measuring them, as if he was counting. "Danny," she whispered. "What are you doing?" "What I should have done months ago," he replied. "Please trust me, Your Highness. And please move." Something in his voice made her obey. She stepped aside, and Danny moved forward. He reached behind his back, beneath the formal jacket he wore, and drew out something that had been hidden against his spine. It was a sword, but unlike any blade Zarathiel had ever seen. The metal was black as void, and it seemed to drink the light around it, creating a small pocket of darkness wherever it moved. A gasp ran through the soldiers. Even Vexaran took a step back. "That's impossible," the Lord breathed. "That's a void blade. Those are only carried by shadow cores," Danny finished. His voice was still quiet, but now it carried the weight of absolute certainty. "First Regiment. 237 operations across known space. 0 failures." He looked at Vexaran, and for the first time, the Lord saw what lay beneath the humble mask. "My name is Commander Daniel Cole. Calcine, Reaper. And you made a very serious mistake tonight, my lord." Vexaran recovered quickly, his fear transforming into anger. "Kill him," he screamed at his soldiers. "Kill them both." The soldiers charged, and Danny moved. Zarathiel had seen Valorian warriors in combat. They were fast and strong, capable of feats that humans could never match. But what she witnessed in the next few minutes made everything she knew meaningless. Danny flowed through the soldiers like water through stone. He didn't fight like a Valorian. He didn't fight like anything she had ever seen. He used their size against them, slipping beneath their guards, turning their momentum into weapons. The void blade sang through the air, leaving trails of darkness in its wake. Bodies fell. 1, 2, 5, 10. Soldiers tried to surround him, but he was never where they expected. He moved between them like a ghost, striking vital points with surgical precision. Some died instantly. Others fell screaming, their limbs useless. 20 soldiers down. 30, 40. In 4 minutes. It was over. Danny stood in the center of the throne room, surrounded by fallen bodies. He wasn't even breathing hard. A few drops of blood marked his face and clothes, none of it his own. Vexaran was the only enemy still standing. The Lord had pressed himself against a pillar, his ceremonial blade trembling in his grip. All his arrogance had vanished, replaced by pure animal terror. "What are you?" he whispered. Danny looked at him with eyes like winter ice. "I'm a maintenance technician," he said. "I fix problems." He moved so fast that Zarathiel barely saw it. One moment Vexaran held a blade. The next, he was on his knees, disarmed and helpless. Danny turned to face Zarathiel. For just a moment, the coldness in his eyes softened. "Your Highness," he said, gesturing at the fallen lord. "This one is yours to judge." Zarathiel stared at her husband, this stranger who had hidden himself so completely within the shell of a common man. Her mind was racing, trying to process everything she had just witnessed. "Why?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. "Why didn't you tell me?" Danny lowered his blade. The darkness around it faded slightly. "Because the treaty needed to work," he said. "Because someone had to protect you, really protect you, and the Terran Coalition didn't trust anyone else with the job." He paused, and something human flickered in his eyes. "And because after 237 missions, I thought maybe I could build something instead of destroying it. I'm sorry I lied to you." Outside, loyal guards were shouting, fighting to retake the palace. The coup was failing. But Zarathiel barely heard them. She was looking at Danny Cole, commander, killer, maintenance worker, husband, and realizing that she had never truly known him at all.